Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse Robbins, and welcome to LPLE from Dialogue FM. We're the podcast that lets you practice listening in English. We speak English slowly and clearly so that you can follow along and understand native English speakers more easily. I'm excited to help you improve your English listening skill, as well as help you learn new vocabulary, grammar, and idioms commonly heard in conversations among native English speakers. If you want to practice listening in English, then we invite you to join our conversation. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Jesse.
Another interesting story about Vietnam. Remember, I was there for 2.5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And during this trip to Vietnam, I actually had the chance to visit another province. Now, when most people think about going to Vietnam, they think about going to Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, maybe even Ha Long Bay, right?
Right.
You visited those three places, didn't you?
I did. You took me around and played tour guide. Thank you.
During this particular trip, I spent 1 week in a province called Dong Thap. It's about a 3.5 hour to 4 hour bus ride southwest of Ho Chi Minh City.
Okay, so in the south of the country.
Yeah. I was there for 1 week, and it was a very fun experience. The city itself where I was in, which is called Khao Lang, is a pretty small but rapidly developing city. It's small compared to, of course, Ho Chi Minh City, but you start to see a lot of commercial businesses starting to grow.
That's good.
Yeah, and exactly. There's big hotels. There's stores that sell lots of computer peripherals and whatnot. It's a rapidly growing city, which is really exciting. And the people were so welcoming. That's not to say that other parts of Vietnam aren't. I'm sure there are. This city, in this city, we had the chance to meet college students at the local university. And these students are practicing English. And because there's not a lot of foreigners that come into the city or province in general, they're so excited to meet us.
That's great that they had a chance to speak with people who were native speakers.
Yeah. There was one afternoon, I walked around the lake. There's a popular lake there. It's not as big as our Green Lake, right, in terms of size, but it's still made for a pleasant walk around the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And multiple times as I walked around the lake, I was stopped by local Vietnamese just because they wanted to say hi and ask where I'm from.
Do you think that was because they recognized that you were foreign to Vietnam and that you probably spoke English? Do you think it was an opportunity for them to practice their language skills?
It's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of, one, I'm a foreigner. More specifically, I am an atypical looking foreigner.
Meaning you don't look like a white American?
Correct. Now, in Vietnam, it was very hot. So I tanned very quickly. I got darker skin very quickly. So any chance of me looking even remotely American or European was gone. So there was an element of I'm a foreigner, but there's also a sense of I am a strange looking foreigner.
You felt like you looked unique?
Very much so. And that's not a bad thing. It's fine. I've kind of expected it at this point. And then there's also the element of them wanting to practice their English, which is also fine. So that leads me to another story I wanted to talk to you about. It's not just about how friendly the local residents of the city were. It's not how welcoming the university of students were for us. There's one common theme I've noticed that makes me admire people studying the English language in general. The Vietnamese I met work so hard to find a way to practice English. They find every opportunity they can, and they are not shy about it.
Does this make them rude, or did they interrupt your other events or conversations?
Not at all. So they were really respectful. Now, maybe one could say that it might be rude of them to yell hello when I'm just trying to have a peaceful walk around the lake, but they don't know I'm trying to have a peaceful walk around the lake.
They reached out and introduced themselves and engaged in a conversation from scratch without any introduction.
Exactly. And I admire that. I admire that tenacity. I admire that enthusiasm. I admire that dedication. And I admire that energy from them. When learning a foreign language, one of the biggest challenges I think we as Americans have is we are so afraid of making a mistake. We don't want to try to practice our Spanish that we learned for 1 year because we're somehow embarrassed by it. Whereas these students who have been practicing English for, of course, over 1 year, but who have never left Vietnam in their life, let alone seen many foreigners in their city,
were completely ready to walk up to a stranger and start speaking in their new language.
Exactly, and I truly admire that. So, for many foreigners who are unfamiliar with traveling in a country like Vietnam, where people are working so hard to practice English because they know that English is going to provide them with an economic opportunity.
Right. It gives them better jobs. It gives them access to opportunities they wouldn't have if they don't speak
That's right.
the language of business, which is usually English.
Right. So if you're a foreigner who goes to this kind of country and you're not familiar with that kind of mentality, of course, it could seem pretty rude or disruptive to your schedule because maybe you're just trying to enjoy the scenery or take some photos. You just want time to yourself. I want to encourage people listening to this, as you in the audience, as you practice English by listening to this podcast, and as you introduce yourself to foreigners and say hello, just know that there are many people who admire what you're doing because what you're doing is not easy at all.
Agreed.
Thank you for listening to this episode of LPLE. Let's practice listening in English from Dialogue FM. Subscribe to LPLE on iTunes to hear the latest episodes, or listen to past episodes on our website, dialogue.fm. That's dialog.fm. If you have questions or comments about English, or if you would like for us to use a word, grammar, or idiom in our conversation so you can learn how to use it correctly, we would love to hear from you on Twitter at dialogue.fm or Facebook at facebook.com/dialoguefm.